Well, hello and happy Wednesday, friends. Today we are going to be talking about all the books that I read in December. I am actually pretty surprised with the amount of books that I was able to read in December. I read a total of 18 books, which I think is probably, for the total of 2024, probably the most books that I read in a month. I was really trying to hit that Goodreads goal, like desperately. I did not want to fail. Not that it's a failure, but to me, I thought it was. Okay. So I was really trying to get to 125 books for the year. I ended up going over, which is even better. But I also did have 2 DNFs. So I would say I had a pretty good reading month. I had a lot of like 4-star reads, a lot of reads that I really, really enjoyed, but also I did a little like reading for Christmas romances, and that kind of brought it down. But I ended the month off really strong. So we're just going to get started. I will go ahead and talk about the DNFs that I DNF'd, the books that I DNF'd. So the first one that I have is, well, actually they are both fantasy romances. The first one is Of Blood and Ether, I believe. I don't remember who the author is. I got about, I don't know, maybe 20% into this book. It's just not capturing my attention. And I don't have time for books that are just not capturing my attention anymore. So DNF that one. Now, The Ever King is the second book that I DNF'd. And I don't know if I want to continue. It may have just been a wrong book, wrong time to read the book. I'm not making any sense. But somebody convinced me that I need to go back to this book because I know that this is a very well-loved book and I want to really love it. And I have never, I don't want to say never, I don't think I have read a pirate fantasy romance, and this is pirates. So I don't know what it is. It wasn't working for me at the moment. So I put it down. This is a DNF for now. So we're going to get into the books that I actually did finish. So the first book that I finished is Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage. This is book 3 in the Rebel Blue Ranch series. We are following Teddy and Gus. Now, Teddy at the beginning of this book has lost her job. It was a job that she loved so much, so she's really bummed out about it. And then her best friend calls her one day because she needs some help, because her brother, Gus, desperately needs some help. He is a single father to a young girl named Riley, and he is trying to find someone to pick her up from soccer practice. And he calls his sister, who normally deals with those things, but his sister is doing something. So his sister calls Teddy. And of course, Teddy's like, I'll go and do it. That's totally fine. I'll pick her up. I love Riley. So she goes and she picks her up from soccer practice. And now Teddy and Gus are supposed to be enemies to lovers. Something has happened between the two of them and they don't really like each other. Okay. So Gus is very reluctant when people suggest to him, hey, Teddy just lost her job. She needs a new job. And you desperately need a nanny. Riley likes Teddy. Why isn't Teddy your nanny? Let Teddy be your nanny. He's like, no, I don't think so. But he reluctantly gives in and she becomes the nanny. And I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I don't quite know what it is about Lila Sage and her books. I just come out of them wanting more and just feeling like, yeah, okay, this was a book. It was fine. Nothing really memorable. And I don't know. I just need more and I cannot pinpoint what it is. I don't know if it's lack of sort of character development within the book. It feels like there should be character development because there's a lot of typically heavy things going on in her books, but I just don't feel like we really get to see that and see the characters come out of that. So her books are just lacking a little something for me, but they are still a good time. It's a good time. It's a vibe, okay? So I just need to kind of lower my expectations when I read these books because I know that they're super popular. It's just, for me, they're just vibes, and that's okay. So the next book that I finished, I actually have already talked about this in my most disappointing books of 2024, and that is The Courting of Bristol Keats by Mary E. Pearson. This is book 1 in her debut adult fantasy romance, I believe duet. And we are following Bristol Keats. I almost forgot the heroine's name. It's literally right here. What are you doing? So Bristol thinks that she is just a very normal human, but she realizes that there is something a little off about her parents. They kind of move around. They are very secretive about things. And her mother has passed. In the beginning of this book, her father has now, she thinks he has passed. And it's Bristol and her 2 sisters, and they're just desperately trying to survive. And then they keep getting these letters from someone who claims to have, well, I think they're claiming to be a relative that has something of their father's that could, benefit them financially. She has been putting it off, but finally she's kind of desperate. She's like, okay, we need the money. If this thing is worth what they're saying it is, we need this. Like, I can no longer put this off. So she goes and she meets up with these people, and that kind of thrusts her into a world of the Fae and into a romance with a king, and lots of things happen, and she realizes that, like, I'm not really normal. My family isn't normal. My parents have had this whole life that I never knew about, and they left it all behind. So it seems like a very exciting book, but it was not. This was very, very boring, very, very dull, okay? And it took a long time for kind of anything to happen. Really, the excitement sort of happens at the end of the book. And I was just so disappointed in this, and I wanted more from the romance. And there was a lot of things that I feel like were very crucial to the story and crucial to the development of the story and the development of the romance that was like left off page. And it would jump and be like, okay, here's a summary of what happened. I didn't like that. I wanted to be in it, and we weren't. So yeah, this let me down. But I do love Mary E. Pearson, so I will probably be reading the second book in the series. It's just this one, it let me down. So yeah, this one, 2 stars. So the next book that I read is One of Our Own by Lucinda Berry. I gave this one a 4 stars. I really liked this. This was a super fast-paced, very, very quick audiobook to get through. I believe even if you don't speed it up, it's like less than 5 hours on audio, and I believe it's only available through audio, but it was such a good audiobook. So we're following Felicia, who is a single mother and a lawyer, but she also volunteers at a suicide prevention hotline. And one night she gets a phone call from a young girl who is threatening to kill herself. And she is trying to talk her down out of it, and she starts learning a little bit more about what happened and why this young girl wants to commit suicide. And you find out that her son is possibly connected to what happened to this young girl. And you follow Felicia trying to uncover what happened to the young girl and was her son involved. Like I said, just a super quick read, super fun maybe isn't the right word, but it was a fun read. Even though we're dealing with some very heavy subjects, I really enjoyed this book. So yeah, 4 stars if you need sort of a very fast-paced thriller. Give this one a shot. Okay, next up, I read A Partridge and a Pregnancy by Devoney Perry. This is part of a little like novella Christmas series that she did. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. We are following Ava and Tobias. Now, Ava and Tobias were college sweethearts, and they ended up breaking up because he proposed to her, and Ava was just not ready to settle down and move back into their hometown. She wanted a little more out of life. She wanted to travel. So they haven't seen each other for a little bit, and then Ava comes back into town. They kind of rekindle and have a one-night stand, and then a pregnancy. So this one was just fun, quick read. Obviously, I wanted to read it because it's a surprise pregnancy, and I mean, it was cute. Nothing really more to say. And then I read When She Unravels by Gabrielle Sands. Listen, Cheyenne has been telling me I need to read this book for so long, and I didn't listen until now. And I read this book in, I think, like 2 sittings. This was so fun. I could not put this book down. So our heroine is trapped in a loveless marriage where her husband really, like, he's just not good to her, and he makes her do terrible things that she does not want to do. I mean, like, terrible, terrible things. And something happens in the beginning where she shoots him, and then she's like, I'm running away. So she goes to Ibiza, where she is going to try and make a new life for herself. She needs to get a job, but she doesn't really have any like experience. And then she doesn't want to use her real name, you know, social security number, anything like that, because she does not want her husband to find her. So she ends up becoming well, she wants to be a dancer at this very prestigious club, but she ends up becoming a waitress, and she catches the eye of the owner of this club, and things go from there. She's very much like just wrapped up in things that she thought she got away from, but ultimately it's better for her, and she ends up in a better life. So yeah, this one, again, just a super fun kind of Mafia, very fast paced, very sexy read. The next book that I read is The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden. This is her newest release, and we are following Sydney, who is living in New York City. She's kind of having just the time of her life, but she does not have very good taste in men, and her dating track record is horrible. And she meets this guy who she thinks is just like the next best thing. Like, is he too good to be true? What is going on? Like, he's just so perfect. And then you get a separate timeline following, is it Tom and Daisy? Is that their names? I think. I could be wrong though. I know Daisy is in there, but you follow Tom and Daisy when they are in high school, I think. And something happens. And then in present day Sydney, one of her really good friends is murdered, and then other girls start coming up murdered. And she's kind of freaking out, and she wants to kind of know more about this guy, but the more she digs into his past and some of the things that he's telling her, she's like, you're suspicious. You're suspicious. So is he the perfect boyfriend? Is he not? I don't know. I thought this one was very entertaining. Again, I have called Frida McFadden a popcorn thriller author because she just writes books that, while they're not the best, you simply just can't stop reading them. And that's kind of what happened with this one. I overall enjoyed it, so I think I'm going to give it a 3-star, but it's still nothing like nothing special here. The next few books that I have, I actually vlogged them, so I don't want to go too into detail about them, but the first book that we have is A Touch of Gold and Madness by K.L. DeVore. This is a post-apocalyptic fantasy romance following Gray and Griffin. In this world, the humans have sort of been sent underground because of a feud that is going on between the kinetics and the elementals. There's just a really big feud between these two people. And Gray is Gray is a kinetic, and her father really wants her to find and kill Griffin. So the beginning of this book, it shows her finding Griffin and attempting to kill him, but it goes wrong. So when she goes back to her father, she realizes, I need to flee. I need to run because he's not happy that I have let him down on this, and he no longer has a use for me. And so when she flees, whose hands does she end up in? Griffin's. The man who she was supposed to kill. So things go from there. This was, again, a very entertaining read. I do think probably the middle section of this book was just a little bit too drawn out and a little too long for me. And I also had some issues with the training sequences in here. I didn't care. I didn't care about a training sequence. But overall, I did really enjoy this book, and I gave it 4 stars. And there is a prequel for this book that I definitely need to read. So this is one that I will be continuing, and I did enjoy it. So there's that one. And then we have From Air by Julie Ann. This is, I believe this is her newest release. This one is following Calvin and Jamie. Now, Jamie is a travel nurse, and she is going to stay in this house where Calvin lives with some other roommates. And Calvin is, they warn her before she like meets him, like he's very grumpy, like just don't even try, just leave him be. And it's because something very tragic happened to Calvin, and he has never fully recovered from that. And so when him and Jamie meet, they have this banter that is just, I loved it. I loved how playful that they were with each other. But then they slowly start to like realize, I like you. But the more you get into this book and the more of Jamie's story that you find out, you realize just how connected these two pasts are, and just how much they really shouldn't be together. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4.5 star, and I realized when I was rating it on Goodreads that a lot of people really weren't jiving with this book. And I'm like, why? I don't understand. But I really liked it. And I know that Calvin was a little hard-headed about things, but I mean, I feel like I would be too in his situation. But overall, he came around and reacted in a very sort of like realistic way, and he really just kind of needed to pull his head out of his ass and realize that it's not her fault. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one like a lot, and I'm a little shocked that other people didn't. I don't understand why. And then the next book that I read is Until Backs. This is by Aurora Rose Reynolds, and I gave this one 4 stars as well. This really just felt like reading the old Aurora Rose Reynolds books to me. I think this is like book 14 or 15 in just this giant like universe that she's created. I really loved the first like 4 books that she wrote in this series, and then every other book after that has been the 4 brothers, their children. So it's a big thing. Okay, it's the Until Him/Her series, and then the Until You series. Listen, I'm in deep. So the last few books that she had wrote in the series, I just wasn't a huge fan of. I don't know what it was, but this one I'm like, yes, this is what I wanted. This is what I wanted. So the hero, Bax, is he works in this like construction company that most of the men in this series work at. Very blue collar, possessive alpha heroes. But Bax was not overly possessive. Like he still had this like soft side, and he wanted our heroine, I'm forgetting her name, Olivia. He really wanted Olivia to feel like she, you know, was her own person and could make her own choices. But Olivia is his best friend's younger sister, and she comes back into town and moves in next door to him, and things start happening at her house, and he's like, yeah, you're not staying here, come over here with me. So they form just a friendship, and it just blossoms into the sweetest romance, and I had such a good time with this. So 4 stars for Until Backs. So the next book that I read is Merry Kissmas by Piper Rain, and this one I gave 3 stars. We are following Pierce and Bryn. Now, Bryn is actually studying abroad in London, and she was out with her friends one night to a bar, and there she meets Pierce. They spend a lovely like whirlwind weekend together, and they have just this deep connection. But then when she goes to her class on Monday, she sees that Pierce is her professor's assistant. And despite this connection that they have, she's like, we cannot do this. We cannot be together. And then I think it's like 6 years later, there's a pretty big time jump. Pierce and Bryn are going to the same job interview. And Pierce is like, I want you. I am going to have you. We're going to do this. And Bryn is like, no, I don't really think so. But then he ends up actually going back to her family's for Christmas. So they are spending a lot of time together. This it was a Christmas book, okay? I don't really expect too much from these. It was entertaining, just a Christmas book. Not much to say here. Another Christmas book that I read is The Christmas Tree Farm by Lori Gilmore. Again, I gave this one 3 stars. These Christmas books, I've just decided that they're not for me. I need to stop with the Christmas books. We're following Kira and Bennett in this book, and Kira has recently bought a Christmas tree farm, and Bennett is the brother of the heroine from the Pumpkin Spice Cafe, and he's in town just visiting. And the townspeople really want to get to know Kira more and find out if there is something of importance, like a buried treasure sort of thing, on the Christmas tree farm that Kira has purchased, because the man who used to live there left like a note or something in his will saying that, there's something of importance buried here. So the townspeople sort of send Bennett to get to know Kira, and Bennett, he reluctantly goes along with it, but he's like, I'm just going to tell you all that I'm trying to find this out, when in all actuality, I want to get to know Kira. So that's the setup of this book. It was cute, but again, nothing special, and just a vibe read. That's what this was. And then I have another Christmas book, and this is The Christmas You Found Us. The Christmas You Found Me by Sarah Morgenthaler. I think I'm saying her name right. I didn't vlog this one. I don't know why I didn't, because I read it right around the time that I did my Christmas, like reading Christmas books. This one, I gave 3 stars. This was a single dad marriage of convenience romance. So we're following Sienna and Guy. Now, Guy is a single father, and his daughter desperately needs a kidney transplant. And he is trying, is it kidney transplant? I think so. I believe she's like, if she doesn't get it, she's going to die. And he is doing everything that he can to support her, but he really needs insurance because something happened with his insurance and they are no longer covering what his daughter needs. And so him and Sienna meet in a very like unconventional way. And Sienna decides like, yes, let's get married because I want to help you and I want to help your daughter. And they end up moving in with her. She owns this farm where she has a lot of animals, and things just go from there. This was a very just sweet romance, but it also was like everything that could go wrong did go wrong for this romance. It, like their lives, it was just like, man, one thing after another. They couldn't like catch a break in this book. So it felt like all of that sort of overtook the romance, and it was very, I wouldn't say like insta love, but the way that it was kind of like there was no awkwardness between them. I mean, like you're literally moving someone into your life, and I don't know, it was just, there was no awkwardness. There was no like, let's really sit down and like try to get to know each other. I don't know. It was cute. And I think out of all the Christmas romances that I read, at least in December, this was probably the best one, but it's still like, it was what it was. And then the next Christmas book, and the last one that I read, is How My Neighbor Stole Christmas by Megan Quinn. I gave this one, I think it was 2 stars. Oh my God. What was this book? Our heroine's name is Story, and the hero's name is Cole Black. It's so freaking corny. I can't even... I don't know why I read this book. I really don't know why I did this to myself. Story and her sister come back into the town of Kringle, I believe is the name of the town. And her sister, they're twins, right? Yeah, I think they're twins. And they come in town to help their aunt who has taken a fall, and she needs both of these girls to come into town and help her. And it's right around Christmas time, right around when this town is doing all of these different contests in order to see who is like the most Christmas. You know what I mean? Am I making any sense? Story and her sister end up entering into this contest, and Cole was like, I'm gonna have nothing to do with it because he hates Christmas. He's the Grinch. And once he finds out that Story is gonna enter, he's like, no, this is my town, and if anyone is gonna win this contest, it's gonna be me. And so there's just like back and forth competition between these two, and then they end up fake dating in the most stupid way ever. Yeah, I didn't like this book. If you want to see my full rant, you'll have to watch that video, because I don't want to talk about this book anymore because it was that bad. Yeah, it was terrible. After I finished all those Christmas books, I'm like, okay, I need something totally different. So I picked up book 3 in the Legacy series by Melissa K. Rorick, and this is Tempest of Wrath and Vengeance, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I can't go too much into what this is about, because if you have not read book 1 and 2, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but I am liking the direction that this series is going, although I still really don't like one aspect of it with a possible throuple. I don't want it to end that way, and I'm really hoping it doesn't. But the story overall and the characters overall, I am really, really enjoying. So that is what is keeping me reading it. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to the rest of the series. So the next 3 books, listen, I went on a binge, okay? I started the Morelli Family series by Sam Mariano. After seeing Baron from the Book Baron talk about these, she was raving about them on Instagram. She's talked about them in her like monthly wrap-ups. And then I watched her like end of year favorites, and she talked about them again. I'm like, Samantha, now is the time. Just pick them up and read them, because I love Sam Mariano. So I started with book 1, which is Accidental Witness, and this is following Mia and Vince. So this one is set in high school, but it doesn't feel like it's high school. Mia actually witnesses Vince do something that she shouldn't have seen, and so Vince kind of wants to make sure that she's not going to talk. And you would think that he would be like trying to intimidate her, but he really doesn't do that. He just wants to be around her. And I mean, he does things in like kind of an unconventional way, but it's not like, he's not typical Sam Mariano hero. But someone else comes in to the picture who is very typical Sam Mariano hero, and you're like, well, what's going on here? What's going on here? And I don't want to give too much away, because you do have to read this series in order. So then I went into book 2, which is Surviving Mateo. And now Mateo, we love him. We love him. I gave this one 4 stars. I also gave Accidental Witness 4 stars. But you end this book and you're like, okay, I know that things are not, like, this isn't where they end. And this couple in this book is not end game. You can just feel it, okay? And Sam Mariano is also like leaving a bunch of hints, like not even hints. She's flat out putting it there in your face that this isn't how things are going to end up, but you have to keep reading to figure out how they're going to go. I don't know how to dance around this, but I am hooked, okay? And then I read Once Burned, which is book 3. Now, this one I gave 3 stars. This one just felt a little more removed from the series because we're following Adrian and Elise. Now, Elise, you meet both of them in books 1 and 2. Adrian is not technically part of the Morelli family, but he works very closely with Mateo, and he has for quite a while. So he knows the inner workings, and he's just present in like with the family, but he's not part of the family. And then you have Elise, who is a maid at the Morelli family house. Adrian definitely is not a typical Sam Mariano hero. He was very sweet, very, very sweet, but also like he's a murderer. So maybe a little bit, like a little just sprinkle of a Sam Mariano hero, but not quite like the psychological, you know, he doesn't mess with her. Yeah, this one so far has been my least favorite in the series. I'm currently up to book 5. It's still good. I don't know. Like, she does recommend you read them in order. I just really think probably this one could have been a novella or pared down quite a lot. because did it bring a whole lot to the series? Kind of, but not really. So 3 stars for that one. And the last book that I read in December is a historical fiction that has been recommended to me quite a bit, and one that I have been wanting to read for a while, and that is Yellow Wife. This book was so hard to read, like so hard to read. We're following Phoebe, who at the beginning of this book, she does live on a plantation and she works on this plantation, but she's not necessarily treated like other slaves. Phoebe is mixed. She is half white and half black. Her mother is black and her father is white. Phoebe has been afforded more luxuries than the other slaves who are living on this plantation. She knows how to read, she can play piano, she's very educated. And you know, she's never really been beat. She's just, I don't want to say like lived a life of luxury, but she's, for a slave and for a black person in this time, she's definitely treated better. But when the master of the house actually goes away, and ends up taking her mother away with her, the woman of the house, the lady of the house, does not like Phoebe at all. Probably because she knows that Phoebe is her husband's daughter, and she just doesn't like that at all. So some things happen and she ends up selling Phoebe to a man who owns a prison where they bring in slaves. And it's just a very, very well-known prison because it's the torture that goes on there is horrific, and it's just been spread like wildly throughout. Well, this new owner takes a liking to Phoebe and he moves her into his house, and they start having children, and Phoebe is willing to do whatever she can for her children and to keep them safe and make sure that they have a good and a happy life and not be subjected to the horrors that they could be during this time. And just seeing the things that Phoebe has to go through, and she literally sacrifices every single piece of herself and who she is in order to keep her children safe. Like the love of a mother is like no other. And I don't even want to say that I enjoyed this book because it just doesn't feel like the right word because of everything that goes on in this book. But it was so good and it was so tough to read, and I could not put it down. I could not stop reading this book. And the ending was so bittersweet, but to see Phoebe and her children have a life it was good. It was really, really good. And I definitely want to pick up more from this author. And I really want to read. See, and here's the thing, because I would love to read more stories about like slavery and that part of the American history, but I don't really know like where to go from here because I don't want anything that's going to be like super like romanticized or anything like that. I really don't feel like this one was, although Phoebe, the life that she led, it was very different from a lot of slaves, and even the way that she came out of her story, you know, at the end of, you know, her life, she's way more fortunate than a lot of other slaves. And even like fortunate again doesn't feel like the right word, but because she did sacrifice a lot. But yeah, I want to do a little more research and find more books like this one. So if you have any recommendations, let me know. That is all for this video though. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your favorite read of December was, and if you have made it to this point in the video, leave me a what emoji? Leave me just any pink emoji. Pick one. A heart, a bow, a flower, just a pink emoji. So thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.